Listen, I want you to picture something real, not a hypothetical, not a law school exam question, a real American kitchen, suburban Columbus, Ohio, a Wednesday morning in February of 2026. Her name is Carol. She is 71 years old. She is sitting at the kitchen table in the house she and her husband Dennis have owned for 34 years. The coffee is hot. The morning light is coming through the window over the sink the same way it has every morning for 3 decades. Dennis is not at the table. Dennis is 73, and 6 weeks ago, Dennis was diagnosed with early-stage vascular dementia. He is still home. He still knows her name. He still watches the news at 6 o'clock. But the neurologist was honest with Carol in that quiet, careful way neurologists are honest. He said, plan for a transition within 18 to 24 months. Carol knows what that means. Carol has already made one phone call to a memory care facility 12 minutes from their house. The monthly cost is $9,400. Carol and Dennis have $580,000 in a traditional IRA. They have the house, paid off, worth $310,000. They have $44,000 in a joint checking account. Carol thinks they are prepared. Carol is about to discover that the state of Ohio has a different opinion about who that money belongs to. If you are watching this video and your spouse is alive, and one of you has any meaningful assets, a retirement account, a paid-off house, a savings account with more than $2,000 in it, you need to understand something right now. Medicaid is not a safety net. Medicaid is a predator with a spreadsheet. And the rules it uses to calculate what it can take from your family were written by state legislators who were counting on you to be too overwhelmed, too grieving, and too exhausted to read the fine print before the nursing home admission paperwork lands on the table in front of you. I am going to walk you through the exact mechanics of the Medicaid spend-down trap over the next 30 minutes. I'm going to show you the math the social worker at the facility will never show you. And I am going to tell you about the one legal strategy that has protected more American retirement accounts from Medicaid confiscation than any other tool in the elder law playbook. It is called the Medicaid divorce. And before you close this tab because that sounds insane, stay with me. Because by the time we finish the math, you're going to understand exactly why thousands of American couples every single year make this decision. And you are going to understand why the state governments hate it. Before we go one word further, smash the like button right now. I am not asking. I am telling you, the Medicaid industry, the nursing home lobby, the estate recovery units inside every state Medicaid office, they all depend on one single thing to fund their operations: your ignorance of how this system actually works. Every time a video like this gets buried by the algorithm, another family sits across a table from a Medicaid caseworker and signs away everything they built. Every like breaks the algorithmic shadow ban and puts the survival manual in front of one more couple who still has time to act. Subscribe, flip the bell, join the archive. And drop one word in the comments right now. Tell me, does your spouse currently have a long-term care plan? Yes, no, or working on it. One word. Drop it now. We are going to build the field map of this crisis together in the comment section, and I read every single one. Now let me show you exactly what is about to happen to Carol and Dennis, because the number that is going to come out of this calculation is going to make you physically angry. Here is how Medicaid works in plain English, the version the caseworker does not hand you in the pamphlet. Medicaid is a joint federal and state program that pays for long-term nursing home and memory care costs for Americans who cannot afford to pay privately. But, and this is the blade, Medicaid is means tested. It will not pay a single dollar of Dennis's care until Carol and Dennis have spent down almost everything they own. Here is the 2026 federal framework as it applies in most states. When Dennis applies for Medicaid long-term care benefits, the state looks at every asset owned by both spouses. Not just Dennis's assets, both spouses, combined. Every bank account, every investment account, every CD, every piece of real estate that is not the primary residence, every vehicle beyond one, every asset. This is called the combined countable asset calculation. In Ohio, in 2026, the community spouse, that is Carol, the one staying home, is allowed to keep what is called the Community Spouse Resource Allowance, the CSRA. The maximum CSRA in Ohio is currently around $150,140. That is it. Out of their $580,000 IRA and $44,000 in checking, $624,000 total countable assets, Carol gets to keep $154,140. The remaining $469,860 must be spent down on Dennis's care before Medicaid pays $1. At $90,400 a month, that spend down covers exactly 50 months of memory care. 4 years and 2 months of writing checks to the facility before Medicaid steps in. But here's the second blade, the house. While Dennis is alive, Carol can stay in the house. Medicaid cannot force a sale of the primary residence while the community spouse is living in it. That protection is real, and it is written into federal Medicaid law. But the moment Carol dies, or the moment Carol moves out of the house for any reason, the state of Ohio activates what is called the Medicaid Estate Recovery Program, MERP. Under MERP, the state files a claim against Carol's estate for every dollar Medicaid spent on Dennis's care, and it collects that claim from the house. So the house that Carol and Dennis paid off, the house they have owned for 34 years, the house Carol planned to leave to her 2 children, that house becomes collateral for the Medicaid bill the moment Carol is gone. Run the full math. Dennis lives 4 more years in memory care. Total private pay before Medicaid kicks in, $469,860. Then Medicaid pays. Say Medicaid covers 2 more years at roughly $8,000 a month in reimbursement rates. That is another $192,000 the state has paid. Carol dies 3 years after Dennis. The state files an estate recovery claim of $192,000 against her estate. The house is worth $310,000. After the estate recovery lien is satisfied, Carol's children inherit $118,000 from the house. Carol and Dennis started with $934,000 in combined assets. Their children inherit $118,000. That is an 87% wipeout. That is the Medicaid spend-down trap, working exactly as it was designed. Stop the video right now. Go to the comments. Tell me your state and roughly what you and your spouse have in combined assets. Tell me if either of you has had any kind of cognitive or health diagnosis in the last 2 years. I'm not asking for your Social Security number. I'm asking for a field report, because the Medicaid rules vary significantly by state, and the comments section is where we map this battlefield together. Drop your report. I read everyone. Now let me walk you through the 3 mechanical layers of this trap, because what happened to Carol is not one problem. It is 3 problems stacked on top of each other. And most elder law seminars only cover the first one. This is the one everybody eventually learns about. Both spouses' assets are counted. The community spouse keeps the CSRA. Everything else must be spent down. But here is the part that catches people. The CSRA is a maximum, not a guaranteed floor. In states that use the 50% calculation method, and many states do, the community spouse only gets to keep 50% of the combined countable assets up to the maximum CSRA. So if Carol and Dennis only had $200,000 total instead of $624,000, Carol's CSRA would be $100,000, not $140. The floor, the minimum the community spouse can keep in most states, is around $30,828 in 2026. $30,000. That is what the state of Ohio considers sufficient for Carol to live on while her husband of 40 years is in memory care. The trap inside the trap is that most couples believe the CSRA is a fixed number. They hear $154,000 and they think that is what Carol keeps. They do not realize that if their total countable assets are below that threshold, Carol keeps far less. This is the one that nobody talks about at the kitchen table. And it is the one that quietly bleeds the community spouse for every month of the nursing home stay. Dennis has income. He has Social Security of $2,200 a month. He has a small pension of $800 a month. Total income, $3,000 a month. Under Medicaid rules, the institutionalized spouse, Dennis, must contribute almost all of his income toward the cost of his care every single month. This is called the patient pay amount. Dennis keeps a small personal needs allowance. In Ohio, that is $50 a month. The rest, $2,950, goes to the nursing home every month. Carol lost $2,950 a month of household income the day Dennis was admitted. Now, there is a protection called the Minimum Monthly Maintenance Needs Allowance, the MMMNA, which allows Carol to keep some of Dennis's income if her own income falls below a certain threshold. In 2026, the maximum MMMNA in most states is around $3,948 a month. But here's the trap. If Carol's own Social Security and any other income she receives already exceeds the MMMNA threshold, she gets zero diversion from Dennis's income. Zero. Carol gets $1,600 a month in Social Security. Her income is below the threshold, so she qualifies for a partial diversion. But the calculation is complicated. It varies by state. It requires an attorney to navigate, and most families do not find out about it until months into the nursing home stay after the income has already been flowing entirely to the facility. The income diversion trap costs the average community spouse between $800 and $2,000 a month in lost household income for the entire duration of the nursing home stay. Multiplied across 4 years, that is between $38,400 and $96,000 in income Carol never sees. We touched on this with Carol, but understand the full machine. The Medicaid Estate Recovery Program is authorized under federal law, specifically the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1993. Every single state is required to operate an estate recovery program. Every state must seek recovery from the estates of Medicaid recipients aged 55 and older for the cost of nursing home care, home and community-based services, and related hospital and prescription drug costs. The state does not send you a bill while you are alive. The state waits. The state is patient. The state attaches a lien to your estate and collects after you die. And here is the part that makes this trap uniquely vicious in 2026. 13 states have expanded their estate recovery programs beyond the federally required minimum to pursue recovery from assets that pass and outside of probate. Assets in revocable living trusts, assets transferred with retained life estates, assets in certain joint tenancy arrangements. In those states, a living trust does not protect your house from estate recovery. The state can reach right through the trust and collect. The families that discover this are the ones who paid an estate planning attorney $3,000 for a living trust, believed their house was protected, and then received an estate recovery notice 2 years after the surviving spouse died. 3 traps: the combined asset spend down, the income diversion, the estate recovery ambush fired in sequence. The spend down hits the day of admission. The income diversion hits every month after. The estate recovery hits after the last surviving spouse dies. Let me name the villain, because the villain here is not just Medicaid. The villain is a coordinated policy architecture that was designed specifically to extract the accumulated wealth of the American middle class at the most vulnerable moment of their lives. Think about the engineering of the system. The spend-down rules were written to ensure that private savings are exhausted before public money is spent. That sounds reasonable on the surface. But the CSRA amounts, the amounts the community spouse gets to keep, have not kept pace with inflation or retirement account growth for decades. The $154,140 maximum CSRA was designed for a world where the average retiree had far less in savings than the average retiree has today. The result is that a couple who did everything right, who saved $600,000 or $700,000 or $800,000 over 40 years of disciplined retirement contributions, is penalized for their responsibility. The couple who saved nothing qualifies for Medicaid on day one. The couple who saved everything spends years writing checks before getting a single dollar of the benefit they paid into their entire working lives. That is not a safety net. That is a wealth extraction mechanism with a compassionate marketing budget. The estate recovery program was expanded in 1993 specifically because the federal government needed to recover more money from Medicaid expenditures. The lobbying against expansion was led by nursing home operators, who wanted families to spend private pay dollars longer before Medicaid kicked in. The lobbying for expansion came from state budget offices that wanted to recoup costs after death. Nobody in that room was advocating for Carol. Nobody in that room was thinking about the house Dennis and Carol paid off in 1998. Nobody in that room was thinking about Carol's daughter who was counting on inheriting enough to put her own kids through college. They were thinking about the budget line. And they built a system that waits until you are grieving and exhausted and sitting across from a social worker in a facility conference room, and then it hands you a stack of forms. Send this video to one married couple you care about right now. Not tonight, right now. Pull out your phone, hit the share button, send it to one couple where both spouses are still alive and still healthy enough to act. Because every strategy I'm about to give you, every single one, requires both spouses to be alive, cognitively capable, and legally competent to sign documents. The window closes the moment the diagnosis comes. One share today saves a family from an 87% wipeout tomorrow. Now let us talk about what you actually do. There are 3 tools in the Medicaid Protection Playbook. I'm going to walk through all 3, but I am going to spend the most time on the third one, the one with the most powerful math and the most controversial name. This is the workhorse of elder law planning. An irrevocable Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, a MAPT, is a trust you create and fund with your assets, typically your home and sometimes investment accounts, that removes those assets from your countable estate for Medicaid purposes. The critical mechanics: the trust is irrevocable. You cannot take the assets back. You give up direct control, but you retain the right to live in the home and receive income from the trust assets during your lifetime. The Medicaid clock? Here's the catch. Medicaid has a 5-year look-back period. Any asset transferred into a MAPT within 5 years of a Medicaid application triggers a penalty period, a period during which Medicaid will not pay for care. The penalty is calculated by dividing the transferred amount by the average monthly nursing home cost in your state. So the MAPT strategy requires a 5-year runway. If Dennis's diagnosis came today and Carol funded a MAPT today, the house would not be protected for Medicaid purposes for 5 full years. The MAPT is a powerful tool, but it requires time, it requires health, and it requires acting before the crisis hits. If the 5-year window is closed, if a diagnosis has already come or a nursing home admission is imminent, the strategy shifts to spend down optimization. This means spending the countable assets on things that are either exempt from Medicaid counting rules or that convert the assets into an exempt form. Medicaid exempt assets in most states include the primary residence occupied by the community spouse, one vehicle of any value, personal property and household goods, prepaid funeral and burial arrangements, and critically, in most states, an annuity that meets specific Medicaid compliant requirements. The Medicaid compliant annuity is one of the most powerful crisis planning tools available. The community spouse takes a chunk of the countable assets, say $200,000, and converts them into a Medicaid compliant immediate annuity that pays a monthly income stream to the community spouse for a fixed period actuarially tied to the community spouse's life expectancy. The $200,000 that was a countable asset subject to spend down becomes an income stream that is exempt from countable asset rules. Carol keeps the income. The nursing home does not get the principal. This is legal. This is federally authorized. And it drives state Medicaid offices absolutely crazy. This is the one I promised you at the beginning. And I want to be very clear about what this is and what it is not before I explain the math. The Medicaid divorce is not a betrayal. It is not abandonment. It is not a sign that the marriage is over. Couples who execute a Medicaid divorce typically continue to live together, continue to make medical decisions together, and continue to function in every meaningful way as a married couple. What changes is the legal classification. Here is the mechanism. In most states, the Medicaid asset rules apply to the combined assets of both spouses because the law treats a married couple as a single financial unit. When you dissolve the marriage legally, through a divorce, the couple becomes two separate financial units. The divorce agreement divides the assets. Under a strategically structured Medicaid divorce, the community spouse, Carol, receives the lion's share of the marital assets and the property settlement. The institutionalized spouse, Dennis, retains only the assets necessary to qualify for Medicaid immediately. After the divorce, Dennis applies for Medicaid as a single individual. His countable assets are at or below the single individual limit, typically $2,000 in most states. He qualifies immediately. Carol, as a now single individual, retains the bulk of the marital assets legally and cleanly transferred to her in the divorce settlement. Those assets are hers. Medicaid cannot touch them. The estate recovery program cannot touch them because they are no longer part of the Medicaid recipient's estate. Now let us run the math on Carol and Dennis. Without the Medicaid divorce, Carol and Dennis spend down $460 now with $860 before Medicaid kicks in. Then the estate recovery program files a claim against Carol's estate for the Medicaid expenditures after she dies. Their children inherit roughly $118,000 out of $934,000 in original assets. With the Medicaid divorce, the assets are divided in the settlement. Carol receives approximately $580,000, the IRA, retitled into her name, plus the house. Dennis retains $2,000 in a checking account and qualifies for Medicaid on day one of the nursing home admission. Carol keeps her assets. She keeps the house. She has the IRA to live on. The estate recovery program can only pursue Dennis's estate, which contains $2,000, their children's inheritance, the house, plus whatever Carol does not spend during her lifetime, potentially $400,000 to $500,000, depending on how long Carol lives and how she manages the IRA. The difference between the two scenarios is over $350,000 in preserved family wealth. That is the math of the Medicaid divorce. The Medicaid divorce is not available in every situation. Dennis must have legal capacity to participate in divorce proceedings or have a guardian appointed. The divorce must be genuine, a real legal dissolution, not a sham. Post-divorce financial support arrangements must be carefully structured to avoid creating new countable assets for Dennis. Some states have attempted to challenge Medicaid divorces. Most of those challenges have failed in court. The strategy is grounded in well-established property law and Medicaid eligibility rules, but it requires an elder law attorney who has done this before. Not a general practice family law attorney, not a financial planner, an elder law attorney who specializes in Medicaid planning. Here's the final warning. The window for every single strategy I just described is open right now, and it will not stay open. The MAPT requires 5 years before a Medicaid application. If you plant that seed today, the tree is bearing fruit in 2031. If you wait until the diagnosis, the window is gone. The Medicaid divorce requires both spouses to have legal capacity. The moment Dennis cannot understand and participate in legal proceedings, that option is gone. The spend-down optimization requires an elder law attorney to structure the Medicaid-compliant annuity before the nursing home admission locks in the asset picture. Every single one of these strategies requires you to act while both of you are sitting at the kitchen table, together, healthy enough to sign documents, clear enough to understand what you're signing. The state is counting on you to wait. The state is counting on Dennis's diagnosis to come before you ever heard the words Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. The state is counting on Carol to be too overwhelmed in that facility conference room to ask the right questions. Do not give the state what it is counting on. If this video made you furious, good. Stay furious. Furious people act, complacent people spend down. 3 things before you close this app. Like the video, it breaks the shadow ban. It puts the survival manual in front of one more family that still has time. Subscribe and flip the bell. The next video breaks down the Medicaid 5-year look-back penalty calculation state by state, with the exact math on how long the penalty period lasts and how to survive it financially while you wait. And comment right now. Tell me your state. Tell me your combined assets roughly. Tell me if a diagnosis has already come. The comment section is the field hospital. Drop your report. I read every single one. Go to retireeshieldreport.com. Take the free Medicaid exposure assessment. Get your number. See in black and white exactly how much of your family's wealth is exposed to the spend-down trap right now. The state has a spreadsheet with your name on it. The question is whether you are going to have a plan before they open it. Stay sharp, stay angry, and for the love of everything, talk to your spouse tonight. I will see you in the next one.